talking with them and reintroducing them to our audience tonight. It will be exciting. It will bring back memories, and it will give you a unique perspective on what broadcasting is really all about, too. It'll be warm. At times, it may not be so warm as we remember those who are no longer among the living, those who have been a part of the fly radio and things of this nature, but are no longer here. It'll be an interesting time. It's a party is what it is. It's a reunion, and that's exactly what we're going to be having. So please, do not go away. Come back with us on Coleman and People. I'm Eugene Coleman, and we'll be back right after these messages. We're visiting because this is a reunion. This is the first alumni reunion we have ever had, at least that I'm with which I'm familiar, of the alumni of Fly Radio. If you've been in this community for any amount of time, you know and remember what Fly Radio was all about. It was the disc jockeys. It was the songs, the top songs. I think Tommy said it was song A, song B, song C, and a gold record, and then song A, song B, and what was the other one, Tommy? Let me introduce Tommy Jett. Tommy Jett was. Hi, Tommy Jett. Nice to have you.
Good to be on the program.
Nice
Thank you very much.
Here.
I appreciate it. Thank you a lot.
We've heard of Tommy Jett for. Well, I've heard of Tommy Jett in broadcasting since I came to Chattanooga 3 years ago. The people that I knew always talked about Tommy Jett. We were teasing before, but at one time, while you were at Fly Radio, one of the disc jockeys at Fly Radio, what was the rating you received during that?
I'm not going to toot my own horn. I'm not.
What was it, Bob? Rob Broom was.
No, 60.
It was a 60. That's a 60%. That means that one.
That was because, Gene, that when the logos and all the promos used to use my name. Every time there was a station break, it would be Jetfly, WFLI. So my name was Tommy Jett, thanks to Mr. Benz. So every time that they mentioned Jetfly, they mentioned my last name. So consequently, it kind of promoted me a little bit.
Yeah, but you did get terrific ratings. 60%.
Got good ratings.
60% of the audience is like what? One in every. 67%, Joe. Right. So that's what? That's about 1.5 out of every 2 who listen to Fly Radio. And then you guys are the.
Only 100 people.
Oh, there was only 100 people.
There were only a couple hundred people listening.
Only a couple hundred people in Chattanooga at that time.
Well, okay, I will toot my own horn. I had a big rating back in those days.
You better, because these guys are not going to toot your horn.
They're going to toot my.
You're in a heap of trouble.
That's right. I'll have tooted myself. So I was the #1 disc jockey in Chattanooga. How about that?
And of course, everybody knows that you still are.
Well, I appreciate it.
In the hearts of those who've been listening to radio for any amount of time. How about Tommy? Would you help me to the beginning of the program? Sure. Would you bring these people up, each one of them individually? Okay. Because let me tell you why. Because the people who are watching will remember. They know Fly Radio and they know Jetfly and all the other things, but they may not remember who the people are. So would you ask them to come up, introduce them to me, and tell me what they did?
I sure will, Gene. This first young lady has a special place in my heart, because she was one of the first people that I met when I first came to Chattanooga, and we called her Jetfly Jackie, and her name is Jackie Eagle. She's Johnny's wife.
Oh, she became Johnny's wife.
Yeah, she answered the phone for us on the top 5 at 5, and used to work out my budgets when I was having financial problems, which was most of the time. Kept my checkbook, which really wasn't a real hard thing to do.
Did she keep your date book too for you?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I think she kind of did that too. But she's a special person, and we call her Jetfly Jackie.
Okay, Jackie, tell me just a couple of things real quickly before we meet the other ones. You were a part of the radio station, like the early part of the 60s?
Oh yeah, 1961 to 73.
Well, what was happening when you first went there? What was happening as far as the format was concerned? And not everything. Joe Petit says she can't tell everything. You might make some money.
Yeah,
How much
really.
Again, Jackie, what were they doing as far as the format was concerned? Was that the format new?
Well, yeah, we'd just gone on the air in 61.
And did it?
So everything.
And they started with rock music, what we call rock and roll music. And the disc jockeys were all new?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody was new?
We were all kids.
Just kids.
Well, what was it like?
It was great.
What were your fondest memories?
Oh, just working with the guys.
How about consistent callers? Did you have consistent callers that you got to know?
No, I don't remember that.
Okay.
Just working with the guys.
Jackie just kind of hovered over all of us to kind of keep us out of trouble and keep us on the straight and narrow the best she could, which was not an easy job. But she tried real hard.
Okay, then she must have worked with the lady next. Let's move up here a little bit where we can see them.
Janie, and I know her as Janie Heatherly.
Right.
But Janie's got married since this. Janie's from now in Rising Fawn, Georgia, and Janie and I have stayed in touch with each other. She's called me since I've been at WDOD, and she's very active in the community down there, and I'll let her take it from there.
Okay, Jackie, were you there about the...
Janie.
I'm sorry, Janie, you were there about the same time then also?
About from 62 to 65.
Okay, so you were there during the early years, too.
Right.
Did you watch it mushroom?
Yes.
Was it?
We became 50,000 watts while I was there, from 10,000 to 50,000.
Did you have consistent callers that called frequently and you recognized?
The boys had the consistent callers, and we just had to go in between. Yes, we had them, and we got tired of listening to them.
Well, but now, you all were young at that time, really young,
yeah.
Same age as they, were you not?
Around that.
Yeah, very early 20s.
Were you all married then? You all weren't married then?
No, I left the station when I got married. I moved to Detroit, so I was there. We were all, most of us were single when we were first all there. So we went through the dates and the engagements and the marriages.
And
the whole bit.
And the date thing must have been interesting.
Very much so.
trying to keep one from knowing about the other.
Right.
Yeah, I've heard about
we
those.
got that.
I've heard about those things.
Right.
Was now that you look back on it in retrospect, is it even more exciting now that you realize what happened?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think there'll ever be any times like we had. We all grew up together. We fought, and we'd fight anybody that came along that might bother one of the others, but we took our part with everybody. Jackie and I had ways of really getting back to them.
I bet, and I know those who are watching who remember will be happy to see the both of you, especially those who called so frequently and had to go through the two of you
right.
to get it. Well, it's nice to meet you, Janie,
nice to meet
and we'll be talking with you some more.
Okay.
Okay, Tommy, who next?
Okay.
We keep moving back. We need to move up here a little bit.
The next person, he came to WFLI about 2 weeks after I did, and he's been there ever since. And he's the most stable of all the people. Joe Fred Poteet is the chief engineer, and he's from Polk County. We call him no, not the Polk County bell ringer. That was bad. Joe, I have a picture of Joe with his sling blade, and he was the groundskeeper back in those days. Is
that right?
We teased him about that.
Joe, come up here a little bit closer so we can look into we need to look into...
I was Roads and Groundsman.
Roads and Groundsman.
That was my title until, well, these fellows, they seen that it was to their advantage that I become management then.
Chief engineer.
But you've been chief engineer for how long now?
26 years.
Well, now, of course, you were a young man then, too.
Well,
6 years ago.
No, I really was an old man. See, I was 33, and the rest of them were all 17. I had a rough time there, breaking into this young crowd.
Well, now, how soon after the station started did you go there?
I went there about 6 months after they went on there. They went on there, and I believe it was February 20th. I went there in August the 6th.
But that was
61.
So while you were there, they went from 10,000 watts per day to 50,000 watts. And that meant some additional equipment and things of that nature. Did it also mean additional towers? And
we had to take down a tower, put up 2 more, and since that we've gone 2.5 kW night, so we had to put up another tower. And during that time, we've built 2 FM stations and the TV station here. I was involved in a little bit of the preliminaries in that.
Well, the moment you switched over to 50,000 watts, was there any noticeable change as far as the distance and the people who began calling into the
sure.
to the radio station? What was the difference? Like,
well, we covered a radius that doubled our radius when we went to 50.
Tommy, you were working there too at the same time? I got you back in the shadows, so
I was
you guys.
Joe has gone through lots of disc jockeys, and some he has gotten along real well with. Others, disc jockeys are a unique breed of people, and engineers traditionally and disc jockeys have always kind of had a little separation, you might say.
But
Joe
equally as unique.
Right, very unique. And Joe has been so tolerant of all of us disc jockeys down through the years. I don't see how he's done it, because even after I left, Joe's been there for all these years, and there's been so many disc jockeys since we left go through there that he could probably write a book about disc jockeys and all of their little idiosyncrasies that they've had about the sound. This doesn't work right, Joe. We want echo. We want this. We want that. And Joe just, he just takes it all in stride.
It was hard to get along with those guys that wanted to work on my tape.
We were the best
recorders
bunch.
With ball peen hammers.
Yeah, the
things
70s.
like that. Honest, I went in and found the guy with a ball peen hammer gonna
Yeah.
He was
work
going
on
to
the
fix that
tape
card machine or that tape player.
Gene, in all due respect, I must say that the 70s disc jockeys after I left were worse than us 60s disc jockeys.
How is that?
Well, they got more technical and more into the thinking of the fact that they knew more about engineering than Joe did. See, we thought we knew a little bit about it, but they thought they knew a whole lot about it, you know. So I will take up for us in the 60s that we had a little better rapport with Joe in the 60s than they did in the later 70s.
Okay.
Well,
Joe,
I'll agree to that.
He'll agree with that.
But you could probably tell us some stories, and in a little while, when we take our next break and come back, I want to talk to you about some of those stories.
He's got a whole bunch, I'm sure.
Joe, nice to have you. Who else are we going to meet here? Tommy, let's switch over on the other side, if
I got
you don't mind.
I got to introduce this guy.
This is part of the four.
Wait a minute, before I want to say a few words.
Introduce them to these people out here.
Okay, to these people out here. The next gentleman that I'm going to introduce was there about 2 or 3 weeks before I got there, and his name was Johnny D. at that time. He was from Fort Payne, Alabama. He'd worked in Fort Payne, Alabama as a striving disc jockey, and then he came to WFLI. That was his big break. His big moment in radio was to come to WFLI, as it was for all of us. Later, he became program director and kind of hovered over all of us and put us in the right direction, he thought. But I could tell lots of stories about that. I won't go into all of them. He thought he had us on the right direction when really he didn't. But anyway, we've had a lot of ups and downs, and I've had a lot of ups and downs with him, mostly downs. No, but some ups, and I love him dearly. His name is Johnny Eagle.
Johnny, nice to
He's
have
the
you.
man.
Well,
Nice to have you back.
I don't know what more I could say for an opening like that. Huh?
We'll try.
I'm not going to do it, Tommy. I'm not going to introduce you.
I thought I did a great job on that.
You did.
Yeah.
But I know you was wanting it back.
You're right. You're right, I was.
That's
Don't I
right.
get anything?
Yeah.
I mean, tell him how
Thank
great I
you.
was. Or...
The man up here snapping his finger, he must want something. Give him some popcorn.
We need to move up. I know we move.
Tommy pushed me back. That's what the problem
Well,
was.
he wanted to be in the limelight.
That's
you see.
right.
I know. I put him in the lime and let me have the lime.
That's true.
Well, you guys started about the same time. What, 1961? I know you were about 15. He was about 12 at the time. From
Yeah.
what,
True.
right?
He's older
With my
than me. Obviously, he
calculations.
looks it.
Yeah. Tommy's still about 12.
What happened? I've been looking at pictures of you guys and remembered the 60s pompadours, you know, and things of this
Yeah.
nature. Now here it is, 20-some years later, and neither one of you have pompadours. You got white hair.
We don't have much of it.
The only pompadour I got is right here.
And mine's whiter than his.
I wanted to ask you a question I've asked Tommy probably 2 or 3 different times. Johnny, did you have any idea at all during that time when you from the early 60s right straight through? Did you have any idea at that time in what you were involved? That you were setting precedents?
In fact, I didn't have any idea what I was doing.
He didn't know. He didn't know what he was doing.
I mean, we were just having fun. I mean, it was just fun. I mean,
But you had some order, you had some direction.
oh well, yeah, we might have had a
Things
little
of
of
that
that, but
nature.
we probably didn't recognize it as that at the time. You know.
But you look back on it, it's a whole lot different now when you look back on it than it was
yeah.
at that particular time.
Sure.
Because that's what
You'll get your turn, Barney.
because this is the area that everybody talks about.
Oh yeah.
The most popular music now and movies
Right.
are the movies of the 60s,
Right.
the late 50s, the early 60s, right
Right.
straight through to the 70s. So you all were part of a unique occurrence. While we maybe not have recognized it at the time.
Oh no. No, you didn't. I mean, we were over here talking a little bit earlier, and I'd said that I heard Paul Harvey speak in Atlanta, and he said the best of times are now, because 20 years down the road, those will be referred to as the good old days. So they are the best of times. So
Yeah.
Well,
that's a little deep, but that's okay.
It's all right to have that in the middle of a good show and a good reunion, a good alumni reunion. Because we understand this is the first time the whole group's ever got together as a group for a show.
Yeah.
Let me say this. I think, Johnny and I were discussing that. We didn't know then, rock and roll was only about 4 years old or 4 or 5 years old when we started this whole thing, Mr. Benz. And really, at the time, we didn't realize what we were doing. And now we're kind of reaping some of the benefits from it, really. Because at that time, we were, like Johnny said, we were just having a good time. But actually, we were setting a precedent, and Johnny came up with a lot of good ideas, and as program director, and we all did, and now radio stations today are doing the same thing. We did 20 years ago.
But some of them will do them a little better than we did, Tommy.
maybe. But we packed it out at the auditorium with fly spectaculars and, and things of that nature. And
well, and then too, almost all of you all who were involved in fly radio during that time are still involved in broadcasting in some way.
True.
Just about, just about all of us.
It set a precedent for your lives
for
too.
our whole careers. Yeah.
Which of the remaining guys now were on the air also?
This gentleman right here.
Okay, bring him up and introduce him. Don't run away. I want to get
wait a minute. I got to introduce Ron. Okay, Ron.
It's going to take a long time.
No, it's not going to take too long.
Do it to this camera.
Okay, Ron and I, we went to school together in 1960 at Mid-South Announcing School. He's from Shelbyville, Tennessee, and we had so much fun, he and Dale Anthony and myself, and little did we know, he went to Tompkinsville, Kentucky. We had an opening at WFLI, and Dale and I suggested to Johnny that we get Ron Arnold, who at that time folks will remember as Ron Daly, on the air. And Ron is one of the best promotion people that I've ever known, and he still is. Ron Daly.
Hi, Ron. Nice to have you.
Good to see you.
Just bring back some memories being with these guys.
Really and truly, we've got a bunch of young guys in older bodies here, Gene, just having a good time, and it's a lot of fun bringing back a lot of these memories. And I was just thinking it'd be hard to put a ribbon around all the fun that this crowd has had at Jetfly Radio, especially in the early years.
Well, we're going to take a commercial break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to talk. We want to meet the rest of the group here in just a moment. But when we come back, I want to talk about some of the unique promotions you do, like why don't you tell me about the lion?
I got to tell you that story.
The missing lion. We'll hear that story from all the. We'll have you set the pace, and these guys contribute because I understand all of y'all were in it. Tommy, I guess, is the only one who didn't know at the time. Coleman and People is the program. We're having a reunion, alumni reunion with Fly Radio in its greatest days. We'll be back to meet more of the people and talk with them after these messages. So the people are still alive, and they're here tonight. You might not be able to tell that by looking at them. Where did Bob Broom go? Anyhow, you might not be able to tell that looking at Bob Broom, but we are alive and well tonight. These are three of the disc jockey, the named disc jockeys that you may remember. Tommy Jet, as he said, was used every time there was a break with Jetfly Radio. Ron.
Daly. It was Ron Daly at that time. Daly at that time.
But this is a different one, so I'll forget this one. So it was Ron Daly, and then John the Eagle, who has never changed that name. To the radio people in this area, you have continued to be John the Eagle. Of course, we know that your alias is really Davis, isn't it?
He's not
tell me the story. I know you guys get involved in a lot of things. You did a lot of things. Yeah, a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But tell us the classic one about. I understand that you all had a pet lion.
Right, a lioness and
a lioness.
Yeah, a female.
Oh, okay.
Lioness.
Yeah.
A lioness. Yeah.
I was just wondering how important
Dale
it was.
Anthony, how we got that is one morning Dale Anthony was reading the news or ripping the news wire and happened to see a story that said that someone had a lioness for sale in Birmingham, Alabama. So he suggested to Mr. Benz, we need a mascot. And at that time, it seemed like a good idea.
Well, we got to go back a little further, Tommy, because there was a competitor in town that had Tiger Radio.
That's
a time in life when all the gasoline companies were saying, put a Tiger in your tank. And they had tied in with Tiger Radio. So Mr. Benz, the owner of WFLI, put out the challenge to the DJs of come up with something to knock that Tiger Radio in the head. Just come out with something big. And then Dale hit on this idea of Leader, the Jetfly Lion. And we had a slogan saying that the lion is king of the jungle and Jetfly is king of the cats. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. And we called the lion, we named her Leader.
Leader
of the line. Yeah. So after we got her up here, we had a Jetfly jalopy. It was a 55 Ford that all the disc jockeys had gotten out there and painted WFLI on it all over it. We were going to give it away to the person, to the student or kid who could guess the most times that WFLI was written on it. And so Ron was the promotion director at WFLI, and he would go out and take this jalopy with the partition in the back with a line in it out to the various high schools. So one day I was on the air Ron had taken the jalopy out. I knew he had, and he was going to call in and do a little promotion at Central High School when it was on Dodge Avenue. And so the hotline rang, and I picked it up, and Ron was in tears. He deserves an Academy Award for this performance. I thought he had hit a kid.
He believed it, hook, line, and sinker.
Hook, line, and sinker. I thought he had hit a kid. He said, oh, man, he said, something terrible's happened. He said, you won't believe. I said, what, Ron? What's happened? He said, you won't believe it. Mr. Ben's going to fire me. I know he will. I said, what has happened? I never got him to tell me. He said, the leader of the line has gotten out. I've gotten traffic backed up for 10 miles, you know.
Downtown Chattanooga, Market Street, and every policeman in the world came down. This promotion had been planned. Stanley Hall was in on it. The late Bill Warren was in on it. And a couple of the other guys had a little bit of an inkling of what we were going to do, but we had no idea that it would mushroom the way it did. We wanted to say that we had lost the line and that he was out and create some attention with that, but we never thought about when we planned the promotion that all the police in the world would come down on motorcycles and that they might even throw us in jail behind cold bars if they figured out who put that promotion together. So we didn't tell anybody it was a promotion for a long time. The Lion supposedly escaped from the car. They brought bloodhounds down. This really happened on Market Street from Cleveland, Tennessee, to try to find the Lion.
It was what?
St. Bernard.
St. Bernard.
Yeah, and St. Bernard's too.
And then on top of that, anybody that had a cat around their house, a dog up under the house, started calling the police department thinking that the Lion was at their house, and it created quite a lot of havoc, and frankly did get the station a lot of publicity in broadcast magazine and trouble, newspaper, and could have got some folks put in jail had we known who had done something like that. See, but we didn't tell for a long time. And luckily, Mr. Benz didn't fire us. We found the Lion, and all worked out well, and the station got a lot of publicity out of it.
The greatest promotion ever happened.
The Lion was just tied around the corner anyway.
Where did you hide it? The Lion was safe and sound.
Where did you hide it?
In the back of a trunk of a friend's car with air. We had it fixed where the Lion could breathe and everything.
Yeah, I knew nothing whatsoever about it. Zero. But I wasn't the only one.
Tommy really felt sorry for us.
Yeah,
you know,
Mr. Benz didn't know about it. I don't think Johnny knew about it, and he was a program director, so it was kept very secretly, really.
Ron, how many of you all did know what was going on?
There was actually 3 people that knew exactly. You know, Ben Franklin says 2 can keep a secret when 3 of them are dead. So the secret didn't last real long.
Yeah, no, but at that time, only 3 people knew about it, really.
Well, how did you react? How did you respond when you...
I was shocked. Like I said, I thought he'd hit it. First of all, I thought he'd hit a kid, you know, and I was relieved to know that he hadn't done that. But then when I found out that the Lion had gotten out, I thought, oh, God, this Lion's, you know, because she wasn't really vicious. But when she was eating or when she got hungry, she would display her viciousness, so she could be vicious, and there was some potential danger there, and I thought, oh, Lord, you know.
Well, there's one characteristic we haven't mentioned about the Lion. The Lion was blind in one eye.
Oh.
And would jump on anyone that made a move.
Right.
And he was so big, he would knock you across the room.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes, as a joke, the DJs would let the Lion loose in the lobby of the radio station to knock a newcomer over when they...
This is true. This
That
is
was
true.
an initiation deal there.
Yeah.
She was that docile? I mean,
Yeah.
that you could play with her?
Oh, yeah, you could play with her.
New
but,
person comes on board, and the first thing they got was to feed the Lion.
yeah, this is true.
to clean up after a Lion. I don't know if you've ever done that or not.
I have. Mr. Benz and I have done that. And it's not a real pleasant
Well,
sight.
how long did you keep the character? I mean...
Well, she kind of...
Too long.
Too long, really. Yes, definitely too long. She went downhill after that, I think. I don't know, but I think we gave her to somebody, didn't we, Johnny?
I think she was given to a zoo.
A zoo, yeah.
Can I tell a quick Tommy Jet story?
Yes, sir.
Just a quick Tommy Jet story. One time we...
Get into that.
Go ahead.
The Lion was given to the man that was operating Crystal Caverns at that time, and he didn't have her long till she died. But
So the Lion...
did go to a good home.
yeah, and I'll never forgive you. I almost froze to death that night out
Searching
that
for
Lion
I
myself.
remember that. Best I recall, I was a little bit nervous myself, thinking about those cold bars if the police...
There were some publicity gimmicks that didn't work.
Like what?
Well, the one I'd like to tell about is one time we were lucky enough to sell a promotion up in Cleveland, Tennessee, at the Bear's Den Drive-In Restaurant. This was a brand new restaurant in Cleveland. It was a Bear's Den.
Which one of any of these guys were they selling then?
Well,
No, Ron.
Ray. Come up, Ray. Let's.
Yeah. No, Ron sold the. Ron was in sales, so
Okay.
Ron sold it.
But now this is Ray Anderson.
with us, I think.
Ray was a.
Cleveland Indian then.
Yeah.
What's a Cleveland Indian?
Tommy, it's your time.
So what happened? We sold a Christmas in July promotion, and I had to find someone to help Santa Claus out by playing Santa's helper in July. Well, I couldn't find anybody the right size, so I settled on Tommy Jett. You see his size. He was thinner then.
Yeah.
And it took me almost 2 days to talk him into playing Santa's helper at the Bears Den in Cleveland, Tennessee. But he did it and did a great job. Right, Tommy? You had fun. I told you that would be fun.
Yeah,
right?
you did. I almost backed out, and we were already up there, and I said, no, Ron, I can't do this. And he said, yeah, man, you got to. It's already planned. You got to do it. And I was backing out right to the very moment that we did it, and I did go through with it. I got to tell this quickie about Ron.
Okay.
Ron sold.
Don't say too much.
Okay. Ron sold McCann shoes, a promotion on walking from Chattanooga city limits to Cleveland, Tennessee. And so he was going to start out. Back then, McCann sold them 2 for $5. So he was going to wear his McCann shoes, and what was going to happen, he was going to start out in the McCann shoes, and then when he got into his walking, I was going to meet him with a pair of tennis shoes, because you know how it is breaking in new shoes. See? So the night before, I had been out, you know, doing my thing, and I wasn't too thrilled about getting up at the time he was going to
He got even with me for that Santa Claus promotion.
So Ron was expecting me to be there shortly thereafter with his with the tennis shoes. I didn't show up until Ron was over halfway through his trip to Cleveland, and by the time I showed up, he was walking like
As good as those new shoes were.
He said, "Oh man, where have you been?" I said, "Well, you know, Ron, I thought you sold this sponsor McCann shoes. You ought to be able to walk in them, you know."
The Cleveland Indians here, Ray Anderson.
Now tell me about Ray. Nice to have you with us. Tell me how you got the name of Cleveland Indian.
I don't know how that got tagged.
He's from Cleveland, and he's an Indian.
Oh,
Yeah, okay.
So that makes good sense.
I think, I don't know who tagged me with that, but it took off and done pretty good, so we kind of stayed with it. And so when I was always the Cleveland Indian around the station.
Did you do a stint on the air also?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. And
They used to have me out with the night train.
yeah, right. We used to do. Tommy and I used to do the night train,
which was what now?
Religiously. Which was it was a really loose program. Had no format. We controlled the format. We tried to. When Mr. Benz wasn't listening or monitoring, we had a good time, and we had a good time anyway. But we got caught sometimes because he'd call and say, "I heard that." But it was sponsored by Budweiser. It was the Budweiser night train, and people would call in and get on the night train. They'd say they wanted on the caboose with, this is Teddy, I want on the caboose with Joyce, and or I want on the lover's car with so-and-so, you know.
Barney to come up.
Oh, yeah, Barney, come on up here. And
Barney, I think I was just told, I didn't know it, but I started the night train. Barney sold the
Come on
Budweiser.
up here, because we're getting back further and further and further, and they can't.
This is Frank Dobbs. We affectionately call him Barney, and he's one of the old fly guys that started with WDXB. So he's a transfer from WDXB.
oh, well, he couldn't stand the heat, so he had to get out of the kitchen and come to fly.
That's right. Yeah.
That's the whole truth. Isn't that right, Barney?
And
And
Barney.
how do you get the name of Barney?
Well, okay, I can delicately tell that story.
Really want this told? Yeah, well, they want this told now.
Can you tell it softly? I can tell it delicately. Barney got the name. Yeah.
Can you make it dramatically?
No, Johnny, you tell.
Is it going to take 2 weeks?
All you got to say is Mayberry RFD, or what else was it called?
Well, look, hey,
Griffith Show.
hey, let's make it simple for you and for the audience. Look at the guy. He's a Barney.
He looks like Barney.
Is he as nervous as Barney?
He don't spark as much.
Oh, he doesn't spark?
No, that's where he gets sparks.
Barney was our house detective.
You're right. He snitched on everybody.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Gene, let me say this. After 7 years in radio sales, you know you work by the book, what your ratings are. So they were going down, and Mr. Benz walked in, started FLI, and I got the book, and I says, well, let's make a change. So I called that grand old gentleman, Mr. William E. Benz Jr., and I says, would you consider an interview? He said, of course. So I got the job in 1964, and I stayed there till 1982. And the only one with non-breaking service, Joe Poteet, is the only one
Has been there
on
longer
this stage tonight that has been longer than I have.
That's right.
Heaven's sake.
That's right. Yeah.
I have some of them straight away, you know. Some of them came back. But
Well,
Joe and I hung in there.
Well, did he
Is
have
that
the
a-
influence on you being in sales, going into sales later, or was it?
Well, I don't. I guess what really.
You're stuttering, Ray. You're stuttering.
Well, what I was trying to think, I really went to WFLI for sales, as sales, and it was combination people at that time. If you couldn't sell and be a disc jockey, they didn't need you. And if
Or an engineer in a disc jockey.
yeah, and I know, and if you were an engineer, you were nothing. I mean, like Joe, he was nothing. Now, I respect him with all my heart, but...
We disagree with him.
Yeah, right. But you had to be a disc jockey and a salesman and a production manager, you know, Mr. Everything. And
Mr. Benz tried to get his money's worth.
yeah, right. Well, yeah.
He's a smart businessman.
Well, hey, Mr. Dynamite, you know, Mr. B, Mr. Brochure, you know, that's Mr. Benz. He's everything, so he expects everybody else to be everything, I think. And that's the way it was.
You were getting ready to tell me about. You were telling me about the Budweiser. You're the one that sold the Budweiser.
I did.
Oh yeah,
I did the night train. I started the Budweiser, but
yeah, Tommy started it.
Frank sold it
Okay, well, when did it start? What time?
at midnight.
Midnight to 1 o'clock.
Right. But Ray would come out and help on it, and Billy Warren passed away, and Bud Bell just recently, and Bud Bell would also help on it. So, you know, we had lots of help on it.
Well, what made it so popular?
Well, the reason it was so popular is, like Ray said, it was a non-formatted program. Back then, WFLI was formatted, very strictly formatted. This was an hour where we could the disc jockey could kind of let their hair down a little bit. We talked a little bit more. I had a thing where I would go by Rossville and pick up Joe and Betty Sue and put them in the lover's car, and I had a little thing that I would toot, which was the night train horn. And it just really caught on. I've still got several of the tapes with Ray on them, and Billy Warren and Bud Bell, and Joe used to help with it.
Tooting his own horn.
I'm still tooting my own horn, because, see, I still make a living. Let me say this, I still make a living. These guys are not in radio. I still make a living on the air, and I'm on the air at WDOD-FM from 7 to midnight. I get a little plug in. That's how I still pay my bills. These guys don't do that anymore, except Johnny.
While we've got you up here, everybody that listened to FLI and in the first days in particular, heard that logo come up every half hour. Do that for us one time.
Yeah.
You were the expert
And now
on
on
it.
we go.
I don't know.
Before you do it, let's take a commercial break.
commercial break.
We'll come
Okay.
right back.
I'll clear my voice.
Practice.
That's great.
Go ahead and practice. You got 30 seconds.
Yeah. You
Welcome back to Coleman people. We're in the middle of a reunion, an alumni reunion. The first, in fact, the Fly Radio crew has ever had. You've met some of the, we've met everybody but who? Bob Broom? Where'd Bob Broom? Where did Bob Boom Boom go? Bob, you need to, Bob Boom Boom, you
Bob
need
came
to.
dressed for the occasion.
Yeah, Bob is dressed for the occasion, and he's having his own party.
Tom, do that station break.
Bob doesn't.
the cloth would say that.
Bob doesn't need anybody. You're drinking coffee now.
Yeah, and I'm leaking too.
When did he come aboard?
Bob was with us briefly for about 6 months, and Johnny fired him, and I can't figure out what happened to him after that. But that was about the whole stint of his.
But later, Johnny saw the light and hired me back in 1982, didn't you, Johnny?
It took a long time, didn't it?
Sure did, and I appreciate it, Johnny.
Was it 1982?
Yeah, the real Harold Lowe.
20 years later. It was 20 years.
Well,
Yeah.
he probably didn't write or leave it forward then.
Bob's the only guy that Johnny ever fired.
Well,
is that
Johnny,
right?
you didn't tell me
Yeah.
that. You're taller than me.
Well, I can remember. Mr. Benz fired several people. I rehired
He
them.
fired you how many times, Johnny? In reality, I mean, rather Tommy.
No, I'm Tommy. This is Johnny.
This is Johnny, you're Tommy.
How many times did you get fired, Tommy?
Oh, you know, not every other day or two. I always got hired back.
You
Mr.
should
Benz.
say on what day.
Oh, how many times?
Mr. Benz, back in those days when I first went to fly, I thought if I could just be here 6 months, because I was just out of school. Dale Anthony and I, we went to announcing school together. I thought if I could just be here 6 months, because everywhere I went trying to get a job, they said, how much experience do you have? I had no experience, so they were, you know, they took a chance on me to begin with, and I thought if I could just get 6 months here, then I can go someplace else. So that so I didn't mind getting fired and rehired or whatever. You know, that just.
Then later, Tommy found out that experience is overrated. Usually by old men who nod wisely and speak stupidly. Right?
From Augmentino. This is very true. Experience devours years. In order to get experience, you have to spend a lot of years, which obviously I have a lot of years.
Tommy, so, all of us owe a debt of gratitude to Mr. Billy
We
Benz,
sure do.
who's here tonight.
Yes.
And he gave us a break when all of us young DJs were out there looking for a break, and a break in a big city like Chattanooga was a big time, especially at WFLI.
Yeah. And Ron also was in school with us at Mid-South Announcing School.
The only one that passed.
He was sent him up to Tompkinsville, Kentucky, a little boy from Shelbyville, Tennessee.
Did I not meet you at the announcing school?
And Bobby came by later. We tried to ignore him, but he wouldn't go away. You know, wouldn't go away. Just kept on bugging us. You know.
Tommy, would you do that station?
Okay, I'll do the station.
Tell me about it before you do it now. This is.
Well, you tell him, Ron.
we had a station ID that became quite famous that actually another DJ recorded from another sister station of WFLI, but Tommy was one of the all-time greats at giving this station ID.
And I don't know how good I'll be at it tonight. I can remember the words to it, but it went something like this. Serving Greater Chattanooga and the Mid-South from Lookout Mountain, Tennessee, Jetfly, WFLI. All right.
Hey, I like that.
Now, on we go with a musical show on Down Beat, 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 Beat. It's Great Gold Record time again. Yeah, that's how it went.
You guys are remembering.
Oh, I'd never forget it, you know.
Did you?
And the weather intro. And now, here's a view from the Jetfly Weather Eye. And I'll never forget the time that I pushed the button and played the recording, and now for the weather report, but I couldn't find my weather sheet. I had no weather to give. So I just
made up.
I laughed and said, "Well, we really don't have any weather."
We had back then. There were lots of intros to everything. There was intro of the weather. We had a news intro that took 5 minutes to do our intro was longer than our news. We only read a spot. We went. Let's see. I can't remember, Jay. Can you remember how the news? Let's see.
You can't remember the news.
I can't remember the news intro. I can't remember the news either. I never was real good at news. Let's see. Let's see. Now, view. No, that's the weather. I can't remember how the news intro went.
Do you remember Barney?
You remember Barney?
No, I don't really. I forgot.
Something about from every point in the universe, Jetstream News. Now, Jetstream News from every point in the universe.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Tommy Jet reporting, or whoever.
Okay, now that he's got the reporting out of it, I want to tell you one of the things that he reported on.
This is a lie.
This is not a lie. True story from Tommy Jet. Promise.
Okay.
It was a typographical error. You're going to tell that.
Yeah, I'm going to tell that. I'm driving downtown, right?
Typographical error.
And I'm listening to Tommy do the news. And he does the news about this gentleman got hit downtown, and he said this Presbyterian got hit downtown.
I did. This happened.
On Broad Street or whatever, where it was, and I went to a phone booth and called him up and said, "Tommy, how did you know that man's religion? Did it tell the religion on the story?"
Pedestrian. That's a true story. Pedestrian. Yeah, that actually happened.
That was really an eyeballographical area.
Was that what it is? Oh, thank you, Ray. Thank you, Ray. You know, Gene, there's some people that were supposed to have been here tonight. Dale Anthony, for one, and Rick Govan. I was for sure he was going to be here. Rick may have gotten lost and not been able to find the place.
He may be out there.
He may still be out there looking somewhere. But
and Stanley Hall.
And Stanley Hall Jr.
We hung the nickname on him, Sinful Stan, the good time man, have a good time every chance he can. I wish he could have been.
And if Dale is watching, I want him to know that he's my boss now, because I work at WDO. He's on my list, number one, for not being here. He has no excuse for not being here, and we would love to have had him. We missed him, and Mike King. I can excuse Mike because Mike has to get up about 4 o'clock in the morning, so to do news at WDOD. But Dr. Dale has no excuse for not being here. He should be here.
When Mike was partnering, it never bothered him.
No, when he was partying, it never bothered him. You're right. Back in those days, he could do it. He's gotten older though, but Dale Anthony is still in the market. He's manager of WDOD, AM and FM. Mike King is a news person at WDOD, and Rick Govan works for Provident Life Insurance Company. He's vice president for Provident Life Insurance Company. So there's still a few of us around.
Stanley Hall's in Augusta, Georgia, with an advertising agency.
Right. Yeah.
And Dr. Dale used to get some of the strangest calls in the morning. I would be reading the news, and he would be playing records up till about 10 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And Dr. Dale gets some of the craziest phone calls, and he'd say, "Get that recorder out, Ron. Let's record this one. Let's record this one." Here I am trying to do a straight newscast. Get that recorder out. I want to record this caller. Radio was crazy then. It was really crazy. A lot of fun.
We got a call, a bomb threat. I lived at WFLI, and so did Ron. Matter of fact, I moved in when Ron moved out.
Well,
and
the rent was at the right price.
The rent was real cheap. The rent was real cheap.
I want to know if you moved out when he moved in, before or after the bomb
Sugar Shack. Sugar. Yeah, and Dale was on the air, and so we got a bomb threat. So if you play Sugar Shack, we've got a bomb that we're going to blow up the place. So Dale played Sugar Shack, and they evacuated the building. And I was left in. They forgot that I was in there, and so I got up and stuck with Jackie.
Let me add a little bit to this. He played the record because some person accused him of having a code that when this record was played, it meant something to somebody special to the other person.
Right. Yeah.
So what happened was, Dale didn't tell me he'd got the bomb threat call. I came on after Dale. This guy called me back thinking I'm Dale Anthony. He says, "I warned you once. I'm going to blow you up now." And so I called the police and the sheriff's department. They headed out there. Tommy didn't know he got stranded in the building. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was. And I stuck my head out the door, and they said, "There's a bomb threat." And I thought they were kidding me, because they did that quite frequently. And sure enough, there was photographers and...
Tommy?
Yeah. Did you? Yeah, they kidded. And so sure enough, there was a bomb threat, and they had forgotten that I was in there. The building had been evacuated. I was the only one in there. So if there'd been a bomb threat, poof.
We're going to hear some more about these exciting stories about WFLI after we take this commercial break. Okay, welcome back. We just have a short segment for the end of the program here. We have been talking for an hour with the people who made Fly Radio, Jet Fly Radio, what it is. It was a precedent setter. You have met most of them. We're going to have to close for this segment, but we are going to, after we go off the air, we're going to record another segment while everybody's here and while everybody's remembering and having a good time. We're going to record an additional hour to be played back July the 4th, Monday evening, and Tuesday morning, July the 5th. But I want to thank each of you for coming. John, it's been a pleasure again to
wonderful
to have you. Just you're now owner of a station here in Chattanooga.
WJTT.
WJTT.
Power 94.
And it's doing terrific things right now.
Things are looking real good, yes.
Okay, we want to talk some more and talk about some more of the stories of the announcers and things. We'll do that on the next show.
There's plenty of them.
Okay, Bob Broom, nice to meet you. And
glad to see you again, Gene.
And you're still in broadcasting?
Still with WFLI, radio and television.
Are you really still after all these years?
I'm back for an encore.
Okay, well we'll talk some more too.
Gene, I appreciate it.
Always try.
It's a pleasure. Nice to have you. And you're at WDOD.
Right, WDOD FM.
From 7 o'clock
to midnight.
And doing
making a tremendous comeback.
And what is it to refer to Chattanooga as?
The fastest jet in the air.
And in
Chattown.
In Chattown.
Yeah.
Ray, you're in Cleveland, but you're not in broadcasting, but you're in business for yourself.
That's right.
Yes. What's the business?
Balloon billboards, inflatable balloon billboards, rooftop billboards, and
a lot of hot air.
A lot of hot air. We do big business.
Ron, it's nice to. I've enjoyed it too. We're looking forward to some more talking and telling stories and
I'm afraid of some of these stories these guys might tell.
They probably can tell them. What kind of business are you in now? You're still
with Multivision in Dalton.
In Dalton. So you're
cable TV.
Kind of close here.
Yep.
All right. Nice to meet you.
Good to see you.
Joe, it's always a pleasure to meet you too. You're still at
Good
Fly.
to be here. Still with them. Hadn't run me off yet.
Engineering and things of that nature.
Still looking forward.
Well, we want to hear some more stories from you too. Barney, it's a pleasure to have had you on the program too. I want you to tell me in the next segment we have when we air it Monday night. I want you to tell me about your reports from the car you used to do.
Well, I've got a few of those.
I bet you can tell us some stories. I bet you can tell us some stories too that these guys have probably forgotten since you saw them from behind the scenes as well as in front too.
That's right.
Okay, nice to meet you.
Same to you.
Jackie, good to see you again,
good
too.
To see you.
I know there are probably many people, let me step up here closely where they can see. I know there are many people who remember your voice, even if you don't remember their voices, from the times they called in, because that's the first one they hear. And since you married this man, it must have been pretty important.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We wish you much success. You caught her?
Yeah, he was one of the callers.
Janie, it's a pleasure having you. Let's get up here where they can see you too. You're where now? You're in Rising Fawn?
Yeah, I'm a registered nurse with Blood Assurance in Chattanooga.
Okay, and you're married and your children all grown? And
Just about, from 15 to 21.
Any of them go into broadcasting?
No, I got 3 in college, though.
Okay, well, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have had all of you and to have been a participant in something as outstanding and as worthwhile as this, because the precedent has been set. We've got to go for tonight. We'll be back Monday night, Tuesday morning with these guys. Until then, this is Eugene Coleman. Goodbye. God bless you. God love you. I love you. And remember, if you're walking down the street and see someone without a smile, stop and give them one of yours. Welcome to Coleman and People. We are in a second of a two-part series where we are revisiting. We are going back in time to about 1960, 1961, and coming back up from that time. Welcome to Coleman and People. We are in a second of a two-part series where we are revisiting. We are going back in time to about 1960, 1961, and coming back up from that time on. And it all evolves around one central theme, and that one central theme is WFLI Radio. It was known as Jet Fly Radio, Fly Radio. It was the top pop, cream of the crop radio station that set the precedence in our community, in our area for so long. People didn't go anywhere without their radios, taking their radios along, and on their radio was Jet Fly, because it provided for them entertainment, it provided for them news, information, sports, weather. And it was setting precedents because at that particular time, rock and roll was just about 2 or 3 years old. And through the hands and the media of Fly Radio, it set precedents that are still being used to this very day in some of the main rock stations around the country. But you will again meet the individuals who made this all possible, the stars of a bygone year who are still in broadcasting for the most part, all of them today. Some of them on the air, some of them in management positions, some of them in ownership positions. They will bring back memories to you as you meet them tonight on Coleman and People. We're going to take a commercial break and come back and meet the likes of the ones I have told you about after we tell you, first of all, about Village Laundry and Jim Denton. The Village Laundry is located, as you know, in East Ridge. It's on Ringgold Road. It's just around from the Red Food Store, just across the street from the old post office. There isn't anything Jim Denton cannot do when it comes to taking care of your clothes, whether it's cleaning and pressing your suits, even clean silk ties, they do your shirts, whatever. Either you can have them do it or you can go in and do it yourself. They'll beat any price, and they're terrific at it. They've been expert at it for a long time. Jim Denton, it's called Village Laundry. It's on Ringgold Road in East Ridge. I'll be back with Jet Fly Radio after these messages. Welcome back to Coleman and People. These are the principles that you have heard me talk about at Fly Radio, WFLI Radio in the 60s and the 70s when it was the top pop cream of the crop. Is that what you guys call it?
That's right. Did we get paid for the second hour?
Yeah, twice as much you got paid for the last hour.
Oh, okay. I'm just curious to know about that.
Tommy Jet?
Tommy used to introduce a lot of great acts at the auditorium for Jet Fly. People like Roy Orbison, James Brown, the Flames, and Chuck Berry, people like that. He could always get backstage, and he could take people backstage from time to time. That was a big event as Tommy Jett and Johnny Eagle and Del Anthony, the rest of the guys would introduce people at the auditorium. It was really a big thing for the Fly guys to get to do that.
It was. The only thing about it, I had a good line to get backstage. You know, I'd use whatever line it took to get me back there. I have to tell this story about me. Is one night we were doing a show with the Guess Who and the Who. And now these were two violent groups. They would come on stage and tear instruments and throw things and do all sorts of things. And kids were screaming and hollering, and it was a real exciting time, you know. And Johnny said, "Hey, man, go out there and introduce the Who." So just inadvertently, I ran out there and introduced the Who and looked around, and it was the Guess Who that was performing. And he ran on stage, grabbed the mic, and I don't think anybody realized what I'd done, but I introduced the wrong group. Nobody even knew that I did it.
Not even Tommy.
Not even me. Not even me. I don't think I realized it. Johnny caught it and took the mic away from him and introduced him, but I don't think anybody knew that I'd done it.
Well, tell me about that facet of it. Now, you all did some unique promotions. And while you were doing the promotions, you were doing unique things to each other.
We had a lot of fun with promotions. One that stands out in my mind was one of the salespeople at the station was able to sell a package up in Cleveland, Tennessee, and Athens, Tennessee, where the Jetfly DJs would ride bicycles from Jetfly and stop at the Bear's Den restaurant in Cleveland, Tennessee, and then go on up to the Cherokee restaurant in Athens.
You saw that, Ron.
And Tommy Jett and Swooping Johnny Eagle, Dale Anthony, Stanley Hall, the whole gang, Nick Smith that was there, they called him Niccolo, the Italian Superman. Yeah. All these guys got together to ride up there on bicycles, and if you guessed how long it took them to get there, you won certain prizes. Well, as luck would have it, and this was before the interstate, it rained. It poured down rain, and all the disc jockeys were blaming yours truly and that sort of thing about the rain, and you mean we've got to ride all the way to Athens and that sort of thing, but they did it, and Tommy Jett was leading the way.
What do you mean? He was in front?
Well,
I'm not saying that. I'll tell you what I did on that promotion. I had bought bibbed overalls, and it poured down rain, and those bibbed overalls picked up some weight. They weighed about 10 pounds more than they did when I bought them, and I wasn't leading the front. I was dragging up the back, you know.
Tell me about, I've heard a story about you and celestial, extra celestial sounds. Tell me about
Somebody else needs to tell that story. I think Johnny or Joe could tell that story better than I could, since it's about...
J. Fred Poteet would have the handle on that one. He was a little bit older than the rest of us guys, and he kept his ear to the ground. He knew everything going on at Jetfly.
Okay, what was going on? Step around here, Joe.
Which ones that you talking about?
Tommy hearing things, Joe. That story.
About Tommy Jett hearing.
Tommy. Well, some of the guys, by accident, found that you could put a switch in the production room in a halfway position, and whatever you played in the production room would feed in over the air monitor in the control room, and nothing ever come across the air monitor except what had already gone through the transmitter and broadcast out to the people. So Stanley Hall, I believe it was, he made a tape. He talked real fast, like you was playing a 45 record on 78 speed, and he was talking about WKDA in Nashville.
I'd always, WKDA, when Dale and I were in school, and Ron, WKDA was the station, and I'd always wanted to work at WKDA. They knew this, so that's why KDA came across that thing.
So Stanley would get down under the production room, down under the console, and take a coat hanger and trigger the cart machine that had this message on it, and it come blasting over the air monitor, WKDA's weather and WKDA time and all that. So Tommy jumps up and runs and grabs him, and the engineer says, "Hey, there's something wrong. WKDA is coming over the air monitor." He says, "It can't be." He said, "But it is." And by the way, everybody was in on this joke except Tommy. I mean, even the girls in the office. And so he drags this engineer in there, and it comes blasting over the air monitor, and he said, "Did you hear it?" And he says, "Hear what?" He said, "You mean you didn't hear that?" And he said, "No." He said, "There it comes again. It's WKDA time." And he said, "No, I don't hear anything, Tommy. All I hear is what you're playing." And he says, "Well, I know I heard something." So he goes and gets him another engineer and brings him in there, and he tells him he can't hear it. And he goes and gets the girls out of the office, and they say, "No, Tommy, there's nothing coming across that." And so he, after a while, see, this goes on for 2 weeks. And Tommy gets real serious, and so he seen Mr. Benz, and he told Mr. Benz, says, "Look, Mr. Benz, I'm going to have to quit." And Mr. Benz says, "What's wrong, Tommy? I thought you liked your job." He said, "Oh, I do. I love it." But he said, "Be honest with you," he said, "I'm cracking up." He said, "I'm hearing things."
That's true.
Did you really?
It's a true story. Really
Tommy was afraid to go to the drive-in theater and get the speaker in the car. He thought he was hearing it on it too, and he told Mr. Benz, he said, "I'm cracking up. I'm going over to Mox and Ben and turn myself in." Mr. Benz says, "Now you just hold on here." He says, "Somebody's pulling your leg." He said, "I'll find out who it is. I'll fire him." And so Tommy come back and told me, and I seen he was suffering, and I began begging the guys to quit doing it. And, of course, I wasn't going to blow the whistle on them. He got me in there one day, and I got tickled, and he said, "Uh-huh, you heard it, didn't you?" I said, "No, Tommy, what are you trying to pull on me?" So finally, we talked Stanley into leaving the cart out. Tommy grabbed up every cart and stick it in the machine and audition it. And so finally, he left that cart out. And it said the KDA weather and all that. And Tommy said, boy, he said, you don't know how good it feels to think you're crazy and find out you're not.
Power of suggestion. Power of suggestion can do a lot. Really.
Well, you had some. You had how many people?
Everybody but me was in on it, and they were coming. You know, I thought I was hearing
you were in
things.
on it, Tommy. You just didn't know.
I didn't know it. I didn't know I was in on it, but I was.
Victim.
I was a victim. I was being victimized. I was hearing things, and really, it's similar to telling someone that they look bad. That feels great. If enough people tell you that you look bad, eventually you'll begin to feel bad. It's power of suggestion.
Can you imagine someone paying folks to have that much fun? Mr. Billy Benz was kind enough to give all of us that kind of opportunity.
Yeah.
And put up with us.
And I was the scapegoat on that situation. I told Miss Brown, I said, I'm quitting. I said, I'm hearing things, and really, this is a bad scene. And he said, oh, no, I mean, I'll fire. I think the boys are pulling a joke on you. I'll fire if I find out who did it. He didn't fire anybody, but it was fun. Oh, yeah.
Another thing that happened, Chris Nicholson, he was one of the first combo men that we had there, always full of fun. So I know you remember, Tommy, who did the record Lost? Was that one of Ray Stevens?
No.
I don't know who it was, Joe. Anyhow, Chris got the record, and he dubbed off on...
Was that the one, I Can't Hear You, Man? I got a
Yeah.
cricket in my ear?
Oh, yeah, I remember the record, but I don't know who did it.
Well, anyhow, Chris dubbed off that part, says, hey, man, you got a cricket in your ear. He said, huh? He says, you got a cricket in your ear. He said, man, I can't hear you. I got a cricket in my ear.
Yeah.
Well, we all had name promos then that we put on the air about every 30 minutes. Tommy, he liked to play his about every 15. If they wasn't watching him, he'd slip it in. So he comes in and he drags his chair up and he reaches up and gets his name promo to let them know that the great Tommy Jett's here on the air. He's broadcasting to the whole world. And he sticks that in there. And what the promo it was supposed to say was, this is Tommy Jett, WFLI. Now on we go with more...
Musical show.
With a musical show with more music on downbeat, beat. And so that's what he thought was going to come out. And when he hit the button, it says, hey, man, you got a cricket in your ear. He said, huh? He said, you got a cricket in your ear? And he said, man, I can't hear you. I got a cricket in my ear. So Tommy, he could just imagine everybody knew he goofed, and he grabs that cart out and reaches up and gets everybody else's name promo and goes and erases everybody. So that put an end to her name promo.
That took care of that. I did have revenge. I did have a little revenge in my heart, so I got back at everybody. I erased everybody's name promo, so nobody had. And my name was promoted all the time anyway because the station breaks, Jetfly, WFLI.
You all evidently had a terrific time teasing each other, but it must have come from camaraderie as well as having a good time.
Well, we had some great announcers there that became legends at the same time, like Dale Anthony, who's still around in the Chattanooga market at WDOD, and Mike King, still one of the greatest newsmen in the country.
Sure
He's
is.
still around. Couldn't be here with us.
Wanted to be a newsman, by the way.
Oh, is that right?
Wanted to be a disc jockey.
Mm-hmm.
Wanted to be a disc jockey. Mike came in. He and another disc jockey auditioned, and Johnny and Dale and I were in the production room. Mike had a wool suit on, 100% wool suit on, a little country boy from Jamestown, Tennessee. And Johnny listened to the two tapes, called me and Dale in the production room and said, what do you think? We said, well, you know, we weren't too concerned about who he hired, really, so we just kind of just at random picked out Mike, and Johnny agreed, and that's how Mike King got hired.
Remember Johnny Midnight?
Yeah, sure do. John Stevens.
One of the first all-time great Jetfly DJs on at night in the Chattanooga market.
Yeah.
And then do you remember when the Cleveland Indian, Ray Anderson, came to Jetfly and started doing the Cleveland Hour?
Yeah.
He's here for this show.
Yeah.
Where is he?
And there he is, right over there.
Here's a Cleveland.
Ray
He
Anderson,
did an hour
the Cleveland
for,
Indian.
He did an hour for the Cleveland area?
He started out doing one for the Cleveland area every Saturday morning where he'd feature Cleveland sponsors and then talk about local things and play rock and roll music at the same time. And he had his own way of turning on an audience.
Oh, he did.
How did you do that?
The commission had their way of turning him off, too. The FCC. Ray was doing a plug, he said, for one of his clients in Chattanooga, and the FCC came in, they inspected us, and they couldn't find any spot for anybody in Cleveland. They asked him about it. He said, oh, I wasn't doing a spot, I was just plugging it. He said, there's no such thing as a plug. He said, you did a commercial.
And Joe was the engineer. So when the guy came in, he didn't. I believe he came to you, didn't he, Joe? He didn't come. To me. He didn't come to me. Joe came to me and told me, and or the guy came in with you, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it was.
He looked at your log.
Yeah, right. He wanted to check my log, and of course Joe was there, and I thought, well, if Joe don't care, I don't care. And of course he had a tape of all of it, didn't he? And then when he listened to the tape and looked at the log, it wasn't in order, you know. So I don't know, it scared me. And I thought, well, I mean, for a couple of weeks, I thought something bad might happen. But what did they ever do about that, Joe?
Well, they didn't do anything. I think those boys, they treated us real nice.
Yeah, right.
They scared everybody up, but they really treated us nice. I want to say one thing for them. So far, in the 27 years I've been around there, they've been good to us.
Yeah, and
Ray would appear in Chattanooga at some of the bigger clubs in Chattanooga at that time wearing a solid white suit and white shoes, and he would introduce some of the greatest names to come to Chattanooga. The CC Riders, people like that.
I didn't know that was a real
the Platters, I got to sing on stage. The Platters thought I could sing, you know, or they made me think that they thought I could sing. So I got to perform and sing on stage with the Platters and with Bo Diddley and what's the fruity guy's name?
Little Richard.
Little Richard, yeah.
Little Richard.
Yeah, in
Tutti
fact,
Frutti.
there was a
Long
band.
Tall Sally.
Long
Remember
day.
that song?
Right. And there was a band from Pikeville, Tennessee, who was real good.
Bobby Boyd and the Playboys.
Yeah, Bobby Boyd and the Playboys. And he called, I was just getting back from Jamaica. That's Ocho Rios. Johnny Eagle remembers that. I just gotten back from Ocho Rios, Jamaica, and Bobby met me at the airport when I got off the plane, and he said, we got to go to Miami, buy me a ticket. And I said, well, I'll go with you. Little Richard wanted him to come down and perform with him in Miami, but that was some kind of loop trip. Nothing ever came of it, and I was out several plane tickets and some promotion time that I could have been selling radio and promoting Ron Arnold and Johnny Eagle. And
Johnny Eagle. Tell them about swooping Johnny Eagle, right?
The swoop.
This was Barney was a salesman, but he was also one of our news.
Okay, we want to.
Yeah, let's
take a break first. Let's take a break, and then we'll come back after the commercial break, and Barney Sparks can tell us about you and Swoop and Johnny. Coleman and people. We'll be back in just a moment or two. So stay where you are. Welcome back to Coleman and people. As you can tell, we're having a terrific time talking about old memories evolving around Fly Radio when it was. I remember the old disc jockeys used to say it's tip-top pop, cream of the crop.
Yeah,
that's
moving and grooving, rocking and rolling, bopping and strolling.
And all the things rhymed and
yeah,
people.
everything rhymed. Yeah,
See,
moving and grooving.
funny how it comes back.
How
to,
was it you used to close out? I got to split.
Yeah, gotta go. Yeah, I still do that. See, I'm still on radio.
Oh,
yeah, I'm still on radio. You guys are not. I'm still on radio.
Well, you can tell I don't listen to you.
That's very true. I can tell he don't listen. He's not a Tommy Jett fan. You know, I can sure tell that. Thank you so much. Fan club. Yeah, I can tell the radio. But seriously, I just want to say, Gene, before we get back to joking and kidding and everything, that when I first started WFLI, my name was not Tommy Jett. Obviously, pseudonyms. It still isn't. Thank you, Johnny. I appreciate that. No, but we all had pseudonyms, including Mr. Eagle back here. I could tell you his real name. But anyway, Tom Wayne was my original air name at the time. And when you first got hired at WFLI, your name was A Naughty Moose, which is a derivative of anonymous. to see how you're going to work out, see if you're going to be around for any length of time, you know. So when I first went on, it was A90 Moose. Then it got to be Tom Wayne, which was an air name that I had drummed up myself, Tom Wayne. So for about 2 weeks, I had on my car Tom Wayne, and it was Tom Wayne. Well, Tom Wayne wasn't catching on too well, really. The next guy that was to be hired, his name was to be Jimmy Jett. Mr. Benz and I had already met and had been out a few times.
Now, by Mr. Benz, you mean?
The owner of the station, the owner of the radio station, the man who is responsible for this whole thing. As he'd gotten used to call me Tommy, so one night he and Johnny were in the production room. I was on the air as Tom Wayne, and like I said, Tom Wayne really wasn't catching on all that well. And so Johnny motioned me to come over to the production room, and I went over there, and Johnny said, Tommy, it's time to change your name. We're going to change it to Jimmy Jett. And I said, well, that's fine. That's great with me. You know, I was happy with anything. And Mr. Ben said, oh, no. So we're going to make his name Tommy Jett. I'm used to calling him Tommy, and we're going to make his name Tommy Jett. So for what it's worth, if it hadn't been for Mr. Billy Benz, there would be no Tommy Jett.
So how long have you had Tommy Jett?
28 years.
28 years. Something you'll never be able to leave alone now.
No. It's it's been great for me, and I love Mr. Benz, and like Johnny I know would say, if it hadn't been for Mr. Benz, there'd be no Tommy Jett, there'd be no Johnny Eagle, there would have been no Ron Daly, no Mike King, no Dale Anthony. So we just want to pay a great deal of respect and appreciation to Mr. Benz for all he's done for all of us, because he laid the groundwork for all of our careers, and I love him. God bless him.
Well, he was a great teacher, but he was kind of a practical joker too. He had a sense of humor too, did he not?
Oh, he had a great sense of humor, but I just want to get serious just for a moment to tell that. Now we can go back to kidding.
That probably played a big part in Tommy getting a new paint job on his car, because every time you go downtown, they'd see this Tom Wayne on the side of it, and for some reason the police like to lock him up. So he got a new paint job. The car no longer said Tom Wayne on it. It had letters that high, they went all the way from the window to the rocker molding.
I couldn't afford a public relations director, so I was my own, So I wore dark glasses when dark glasses weren't popular, and stumbled around in the dark in nightclubs, and rings on every finger, which I still do.
You still do this?
Still do this. And anything to draw attention to me, because that's how I make a living.
Uh-huh.
And I love people, and so that's it.
Well, it works. Obviously it works. Barney, I want to talk to you, Barney, because every time we've taken a break, step up here. Y'all step up here. Don't sit down. Come on over.
Okay,
unless
Jim,
unless you're tired. Well, step up here where I can talk to you.
All right.
I have to get you up here where I can see you. I know that in addition to doing sales, and Ray, of course, y'all did combo jobs, right? I mean, you didn't do just one thing.
FLI had a very unique organization. When I went there in 1964, the TVA could take some lessons from Mr. Benz, okay? He was general manager and owner. Johnny Eagle was station manager, program director, sales manager, and we only had one other besides Joe in charge of engineering. We had one more, and it was Mike King. He was news director. That's the only titles you had. So we had kind of a low rent operation. How's that? but as disorganized as it was, we got the job done. We didn't have a production manager. You told somebody to go cut your commercial, they cut it. When I went over there and I walked in, I had 7 years with another station. And I said, what in the world? They said, well, just do whatever you want to. And strange as it was, it worked. Because we were #1 for a number of years. And strange enough, it became successful and stayed successful.
Well, for the people out there who don't know what a salesman does, how did you determine which accounts you were going to hit, and how did you sell them? Were ratings a big thing then? Was that a good part of it?
Well, most people just ask for them. Barney usually stole them.
Is that right, Barney? Did you really steal the account?
Well, a lot of Chattanooga clients, they didn't believe in ratings. They just bought the personality. I could sell Tommy Jett and guys like that on their own. But your national regional accounts, of course, they bought by what we call the book, ARB or whatever was in. I think ARB was it then. It still is, I guess. But that was the story. I mean, you make.
Hooper and Pulse was the two people who surveyed people back then.
Yeah, the Hooper and the Pulse.
Yeah, and Hooper finally went out of business. But anyway, in radio sales, you sell yourself. I don't mean to prostitute yourself. I mean you sell yourself. You may call on a client 10 times. And you might close him, maybe you don't. But you go back one day and he says, hey, what does it cost to get on your station? Walk in like you don't care where you sell him or not. See, what does it cost to get on your station? Well, if you really want to know, let's go over and talk about it.
Tell me who your competition was at that time. Probably some of the stations are still here, but they probably all have different call letters. I guess Fly Radio is one of the few that's...
MOC was there.
Was it GOW then?
Yeah, MOC. MOC was our competition.
Okay.
Yeah, that was our main competitor.
Well, what stations were there in the market, like the 60s? Can you remember which
Well,
stations were in the market?
It depends upon how you want to break them down, good music or whatever.
Well, how many stations overall? I mean,
oh, them
About 7 or 8.
there were no FM stations then, were there?
One.
One FM station?
Yeah.
Well, whatever.
And which was it? Y'all remember which one?
The LOM at that time, LOM, Lookout Mountain.
And what is it now?
That KZ 106 now.
Okay. So when you went in, did you have to sell against the other radio stations, or what did you
Well, yes, and another tip, too. You never use their call letters. You know, you don't say, well, we've got more listeners than Station X. Never use their call letters. Pretend that you don't know they're even on the air. Say,
I remember a classic line that Dale Anthony used right after a rating book when we had come real, I don't know if we had beaten or come real close to WDEF radio, which is Luther. And Dale Anthony, that morning as I was driving to work, crossing Market Street Bridge, he says, we're not afraid of stations A, B, C, or DEF.
You know, Gene, a lot of folks associate the twist with Chubby Checker. At WFLI, we always associated it with Swooping Johnny Eagle because he brought the twist to Chattanooga along with Chubby Checker. He had his own rendition of it, and I just hope since he's here, he'll show folks how he did it back then.
Okay, John, we got to talk to you about this. John, at least come and tell us about it. Come and talk to us about it, John.
Tommy will do the demonstration.
John, come over.
Tommy will do the demonstration.
Tommy
You
will be the
talk to Johnny
proxy.
about it.
Tommy, okay, now tell me about it first, and then Johnny, tell me about it, and then Tommy.
All Tommy's going to do is exaggerate the truth. So
I don't want to
everything-
dominate. I don't want to dominate this show, which I feel like I almost
No, you
have.
haven't.
Are you leaving, Tommy?
But I love to tell tales on Swooper because I love him like a brother. You know, we've known each other for a lot
So
of
he can
years.
tell the story and do the demonstration.
And we fight like brothers, too. Yeah, oh, yeah, we always did, yeah. Johnny he's got a thing about meetings, you know, and Jackie used to be the receptionist at the station, and she'd call me up when I lived in Red Bank. She'd say, Johnny wants to see you in 10 minutes. Well, it'd take me 30 to get there. I couldn't get there in 10 minutes. I said, well, what's he want? She'd put me on hold, leave me for 20 minutes, and finally she'd come back and say, he don't want to talk to you, he wants to see you. So, boy, that would just tee me off to no end. I could choke him, you know, and I'm kind of high-strung anyway, and I'd get dressed quickly and rush out there, and then I'd wait on him for 20 minutes after I got there when he was in such a rush to see me. And finally, after 20 or 30 minutes, he'd tell Jackie, send TJ in. I'd get in there, and it would be virtually nothing. Something he could have told me on the telephone, just as easy. So he's done that so many times, but I love him. Yeah.
But I like to eyeball you, Tommy.
I know, he loves to eyeball me. Yeah, I love to eyeball him.
What does that mean?
I mean, I was right. I let her look at him.
Yeah.
I don't like to talk on the telephone. I mean, I do a lot of it, but when it come to Tommy, you had to look in his face because you didn't know what he was going to accept on the phone.
That's right. That's exactly right. He'd do it, boy. He'd eyeball me, and I'd rush out there, you know, wait 30 minutes to see him, and then it would be some minor little thing like, I don't know, you know.
You didn't play the right
I didn't play the
in the right order and that kind of stuff.
order or something like
Gene, I kept trying to get in touch with Johnny about this show. And for 2 weeks, I'd call up there, and every time I'd call, he'd say he's in a meeting. I finally wondered how many converts he had had. I thought he was running a revival.
Yeah, I tease him all the time about every time I call him, even socially now, I'll say, let's have a meeting. You know. But anyway, we used to have a youth club at 2310 Macaulay Avenue. It was the first thing that was ever geared for teenagers in a sense where they could go someplace and really have a good time, no alcoholic beverages or anything. And WFLI set the precedent for youth clubs, and we had it at 2310 Macaulay Avenue, and that was when the Twist was going. And we pack it out every Friday and Saturday night, and Ron was the coordinator. He was the public relations director at WFLI. But anyway, Johnny had a unique way of doing the Twist. And with your permission, I'd like right now.
Show us what it was like.
You know, the Twist. No, don't put the Twist kind of goes like this, you know. You don't. But Johnny's Twist, you got the camera? Johnny's Twist was kind of like this.
You sure they were serving no alcoholic beverages out there?
His twist was like this. And boy, he could get down and bawl, I'm telling you.
How'd you come into that, John? Creativity?
He does it much better than I do. I don't know what happened.
See him do it, and I thought he was practicing swinging a cross-cut saw. I used to cut wood when I was just a young fella, and I thought he was cutting wood, you know. He's down in Coleman, Alabama, back out in the backwoods. Cutting stove wood and plowing a mule. He said a mule, I think, is oxen. I don't think they had any mules down there.
I want to know. I've heard you play tricks on Tommy Jett and on Ron and on Ray. The FCC played one on him. Did you guys ever play one on Johnny?
One time we had a minor bird.
That was my idea.
Oh, this sounds like a good one.
We couldn't get that minor bird to talk. And one of the guys got it and took it in the production room, and he taped some stuff and covered the cage up, turned the lights out, and played that to that minor bird all night long. And the next day, we set the minor bird out in the lobby. And Johnny opened the door, and just as he stepped in, it said, "Johnny's a Jew! Johnny's a Jew!"
And, just shortly after that, Johnny said, "You like that bird?" And I said, "Well, the bird's all right." And he said, "Would you take it home with you?" So I took it home and kept it till I was sick of it, and I had to take it back.
And then what happened to it after that?
I'm not sure. Do you remember, Joe?
No, I never did. No,
I think Johnny choked it.
I never did ask. I was so glad to see it gone until I never asked what happened to it. But you know, that bird, it got real intelligent. We'd set it out on the front, and it learned how to drive a car. It go.
Pick up anything it heard.
Oh yeah.
Since you guys, since it was such a unique organization, when it came to the sales facet of it, was determined as kind of like a seat of the pants sales situation?
Well, WFLI at the time was so new, it was really hard to sell, even though you'd get dynamic results for an individual. It was just, they somehow couldn't accept it. Like in Cleveland, Tennessee, the Harley-Davidson dealer would say, "Why, you think I would put my name on that radio station, even though everybody listened to it?" It was like, and my drive and my determination come from, yes, you will, because we are the best. We know we're the best, and I'll see you every day. And one guy told me, he says, whoa, wait, said, "You're in my circle." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You're too close to me." And he said, "You get out of my store, and don't you?" I said, "The only way you'll ever keep me out of your store is to get a warrant against me coming in your store." And sure enough, 3 months later, I had the guy on the air.
Is that right?
Yeah, fact.
How did you come up with that? And nowadays, radio has all kinds of inventory of jingles and ideas and what they call donuts, and I forget what the other things are. How did you guys put the commercials together and spec spots and things of that nature then?
Oh,
you know, Gene, it's unbelievable. But these guys, all of them, would stay out there all night long when they didn't have to. They were out there having so much fun, and they did it. They made them right there in the production room. Stanley Hall, I've heard him with a plunger for opening drains. Take that in a bucket of water and make his sound effects. Stanley Hall, one of the greatest production men you've ever seen.
That was his job then, doing the sound effects?
Well, that was one of his jobs. He was in sales, and he also did an air shift.
I'll give you, Ron, come here a minute. I know Ron will recall this, and I want to share this with Ron while he's here, because Ron was going into the Marine Corps, and I was going to work for WFLI, and Ron and I worked together for, 3 or 4 weeks maybe. Yeah. And remember, we went to the Sugar and Spice Drive-In restaurant in Cleveland, Tennessee. He said, "I've been to North Carolina, guys," and he said, "I bought me a barbecue machine." And he goes out and he shows it to us, and he says, "I want a dynamic commercial." So we go down there, and Ron pulls my hair, and I pull his, and then we start pulling our own. We can't come up with nothing. He's done He's overwhelmed our enthusiasm. We just can't think of anything. So Ron turns the microphone. He said, "Turn the tape on, Ray." And I turned the tape on. He said, "Barbecue, barbecue, 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 at the Sugar and Spice."
We did that.
We go back in there a couple days later, and believe me, the guy said, "I can't believe it." He said, "All I've sold's barbecue. Take it off and put my hamburgers on."
I remember.
You remember, Ron?
I remember. You remember the one that you did drive in at the Sugar and Spice, and you broke the glass?
This little boy, Stanley Hall, was doing the production in the background, and this young guy's voice was saying, "The sign said drive in," and we drove in, and you could hear the car driving right through the restaurant, you know. It was a lot of fun. So much fun. But I was the only straight guy in this crowd, I guarantee you. Remember that. You know, I was the only straight one in this crowd. These guys, you know.
Well, we got more stories to tell, and we'll tell them with the guys from Fly Radio after we take this break on Coleman and People. Welcome back to Coleman and People for this segment. I've asked most of the guys to come back so we can reminisce a little bit more. Those of you who are watching the television program, it probably is more endeared to you than it is to me. I've only been exposed to this situation for about 3 years, but in meeting the people, I was telling the guys here, I had Tommy Jett on one night and Johnny Eagle on one night, and it took about 2 weeks for the comments to die down. Wherever I went, they would stop me and say, "Hey, I remember, I was wondering whatever happened to Tommy Jett, or I was ever wondering whatever happened to Johnny Eagle. I remember when." And they would go into this whole dissertation on what had happened, what a big influence Fly Radio was, and what it had accomplished, and things of that nature. And I thought, well, if we get these guys together one time and talk about it, we find out probably it was pretty unique. You all have proven that by the stories you tell. I thought what I'd do is I'd go kind of like round robin here, and I'd ask a question and have you respond to me with the question. That way we get a little input from everybody. But let me start over here, Ron, with you. From those days, evidently the Fly Radio has left an indelible impression on you. You're still in broadcasting, but what do you suppose was the highlight or the thing that taught you most and about broadcasting and has kept you close to the work you initially started?
Well, thanks to Mr. Benz and his philosophy with radio, we were able to use what talent we had. There wasn't anything to hold you back from being creative. And as J. Fred Poteet mentioned, a lot of people would work all night long for the fun of it. Our work was so much fun, and we enjoyed what we did so much that we could put ourselves and what talent we had into it, and you don't see a lot of that in some places today. And I think if we could put the fun back in, then that's an ingredient that was very important to all of us.
Do you think that it's ironic that nowadays you don't find stations that have fun?
Well, there's so much automation. You hear a little bit of it with the morning zoo type thing, but you have to remember that he gave us the leadway within certain bounds to just be as creative as you could be without depending on musical jingles, without depending on tape machines. You use those to record the creativity and not as a crutch. And it was a blast. And I think if we look back to the Stanley Halls and Tommy Jetts and Dale Anthonys and Mike Kings and those people, Ray Andersons, Bob Brooms, then you'll see some of the more creative ideas that really came to the front in those days.
Do you think there will ever become a time in radio broadcasting when they'll bring back the concept of the personality, like a Tommy Jett, Johnny Eagle, Ray, Ron? Do you think there'll become a time? Do you think there's a need for that?
Well, I think there's a time when all of us need to learn to recommunicate again, and that's kind of what we were a part of at that time, where one person talked to another, and you could understand what they said. You could have some fun with the DJ, and they weren't trying to influence you with a subliminal message. There was no mechanical influence on your mind. This was just one person talking to another and having fun playing records. I'd like to see that happen again.
Yeah, of course, Luther Massengill was probably one of the highlights of that as far as being a personality. Whether one appreciates or does not appreciate what he does, you have to appreciate the fact that he's still a personality. Well, the reason he's got the ratings is he is a personality.
Luther was just as popular then as he is now, maybe even more so if you could imagine that. And although we had a great audience, all of us had a lot of respect for Luther because he was the great communicator. He had already had his picture in Life magazine telling people to let their air out of their tire on a snowy day so they could get through a tunnel on Brainerd Road. And he had done so many great things that although, sure, we'd like to have a bigger rating than Luther, we really idolized the guy in his own way for being a great communicator and a great broadcaster.
And, of course, of which he still is.
That's right.
Probably one of the greatest communicators. I think...
for the fun of it, every now and then, Mr. Benz would put up a reward for anybody that could beat Luther in the ratings, and he made it a pretty high reward, knowing that it would be impossible to beat him.
I think people are still trying to do that today. You get ready.
We actually beat him there about 1 hour of a morning. Before everybody got up.
before he got on the air. Bob, we've done very little talking because you've been drinking so much coffee.
Oh,
you won't be able to sleep at all
Caffeine.
tonight when you go back. You started at FLI, and you've been in broadcasting, at least in the sales end of it, ever since then, haven't you?
Well, I started as a disc jockey, as most of these guys did.
He was known as Bob Boom Boom Broom.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, Mr. Arnold gave me that title. Boom, boom, broom. Sound like a stripper. In reality, no. I started with Tommy Jett at the Mid-South Electronics School, along with Nick Smith, who later worked at Fly. Also Mike King, who later worked there, and also Dale Anthony was the first disc jockey to work at Fly to come out of Nashville, and one of the first to ever work at Fly. Of course, he's not here tonight, Dale. Wish you were here. But I came on later. I worked at BLJ in Dalton, Georgia for a long, long time. And then they hired me. Johnny Eagle hired me, as a matter of fact, to come up. They needed a first-class radio telephone operator's license at the time. They used to be imported, not anymore. And so they hired me, and I worked the night shift. I followed Tommy and read his news for me in the afternoon. And had an enjoyable time working at Fly. And it's a fantastic organization. I came back in '82, and I'm still there.
It's had an impression on your lifestyle, too, because you've been a broadcaster. You've been selling broadcasting. What do you think was the most outstanding thing that drove you that way? Or led you that way?
Ego. I played football in high school, and I scored a few touchdowns and hoorah after the football game and all that stuff. And I really wanted to be an actor. Tried that, didn't work out, so I decided to become a disc jockey, Gene.
And it didn't work out, so what'd you do after that?
I'm still at Fly. Started selling preacher programs, and it's been very, very lucrative.
Yeah, I bet it has. Some of those preachers have money to pay.
And we still have time available not only on WFLI Radio, WFLI TV 53 too, prime time Sunday morning and Sunday night.
Ray, I know that it has left an impression on you. Why you're not selling advertising, broadcast-wise, you are selling advertising.
Oh yes, you're right. I'll never forget the WFLI days. It was. As Ron was saying a while ago, it was so much fun. And I can sit, and you can ask my wife, I can sit and talk about the WFLI days for all night long and never even get sleepy. It's like Ron said, we could do what we wanted to. There was no rules. There was no one governed what you wanted to do. If the production room was open, you were entitled to it. And no one cared if you were in there all night or... in fact, I've been run out of the production room early in the morning. I've gotten there at 5 o'clock in the morning and be run out at 7 o'clock by Swooping Eagle because he had stuff that had to go on the air. A lot of times I would produce things that I would take and play for my client, and it softened the sales so much because they wanted this. They could hear it on the air. And Mr. Benz, he's a genius when it comes to getting the most a person has got in his soul. If you work for Billy, he'll get it right out of your heart, right out of your soul, and it has made it fun and enjoyable. And it was every day was fun.
Well, that fun and that creativity evidently has been the bottom line for your new business now.
You're right. That's exactly right.
We'll be back and talk with them a little bit more after this. Very quickly, as we have spent this time with the members of the original Fly Radio crew, we're saying the last parts of what left an indelible impression on you, especially for the rest of your life when you worked at Fly Radio.
I'm going to be very brief about it. I think the fact that I was just at the right place at the right time. It wasn't talent. It was just I don't know, it was just coincidence, really. And I just want to thank you for having us on your program tonight. And this has been a memorable occasion for me, and I'm sure for all the guys that were a part of a great organization. And I want to thank Mr. Benz. And that's about it. I'm on the air at WDOD from 7 till midnight.
WDOD
FM, right, from 7 till midnight.
7 o'clock to midnight.
Right.
And doing some of the things you've always done before.
Love it.
Some of the lines real quickly that you...
Hey now!
Yeah?
That's it.
And the Chattown thing.
And yeah, well, yeah, your leader and the Chattown, all these little cliches and things that I've used that work for me have kept me working for the most part. And you use what works and what doesn't work, you discard, and some of those things work real well for me. So I appreciate it.
I want to tell you how much I've appreciated you all coming and being here too. But for your part, for the last thing, give us the close you always use.
I'll be happy to do that. That's it. Gotta go, gotta get, gotta split. It's been fun, honey. But TJ gotta run. If you can't make it, fake it. Keep that big picture. And remember, if things didn't go well for you today, ain't nothing forever, honey. TJ loves you.
That's about as famous as they come, Joe. We've been talking. You've stayed with Fly Radio for what? How 27?
27 years.
And there must have been a reason for that.
Well, I guess that if you look at a little sample of what has happened for the last 27 years, you've seen that here tonight, and somehow that just grows on you, and you can't get away from it. I think that I've been privileged to serve with the greatest organization in entertainment that has ever been. There's been some that may have been bigger in ratings in different towns and things like that, but you can see that we have. I've been privileged to work with some of the finest fellows in the world.
While you're talking about that, we have less than a minute. Would you share with us those who started and who are no longer here? Could we remember
Gene, I'd like to remember 3 of the fellows. As far as I know, only 3 in our organization that was ever in the organization that's passed away. Bud Bell, better known as the Polk County Bell Ringer, passed away in 1980. One of the dearest friends I ever had. And then we had Glenn Segrist, who passed away some 3 months ago. I'm sorry, I didn't know that he'd passed away till I got trying to get in touch with him for this show. And then just yesterday, we laid Billy Warren's remains to rest. And so I'd like for us to observe a moment of silence in remembrance of these fellows. They're just as great as the rest.
Well, thank you, Joe, and thank you for all participating and being a part of the show. I hope it's brought back memories, and I hope as the memories have come back that it's brought back warm feelings of yesteryear. That's going to do it for us today. My time is gone. I thank you for yours. Until the next time, this is Eugene Coleman. Goodbye. God bless you. God love you. I love you. And remember, if you're walking down the street sometime today or any time of any day and see someone without a smile, stop and give them one of yours.